Good evening. Can everyone hear me? Great. My name is Alyssa Tibbetts. I am pleased to serve as the moderator for this evening's Town Council Candidates Forum. I want to thank you all for joining us and provide a brief overview of the program for tonight before we get started. This forum is hosted by the town and is designed to be an opportunity for the 7 candidates for Cumberland Town Council to introduce themselves and speak to a few issues of significance to local government. While we certainly appreciate that there are many things you'd like to hear from the candidates this evening, we also want to be respectful of everyone's time and busy calendars. So the total program this evening is designed to last about 90 minutes. Each candidate will be offered 2 minutes for opening remarks and 2 minutes for closing remarks at the beginning and end of the forum. I have prepared 4 questions for the candidates, which they have not seen prior to being asked them, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to each of the questions in a rotating order on the dais here. We have not allotted time for questions from those of you in attendance tonight, and unfortunately we're not able to cover every area that may be of community interest within the time allotted for the forum, but of course we encourage you to reach out to candidates directly with any questions you have following tonight's program between now and Election Day. We're asking the candidates, of course, to be respectful of the time limits that we've set for the program. They're displayed quite boldly here on the screen to my left, so it will be hard to miss, in addition to a sound, I think, or an alarm that goes off at the end of the time. We also ask the candidates to be respectful of one another, and since this is not a debate, to be mindful not to interrupt one another and allow one another to finish within their allotted time. Lastly, I just want to remind everyone that this forum is intended for Cumberland Town Council. There are 3 seats available in the upcoming June 11th election. There is an at-large seat for which 3 candidates are running. Those candidates are to my right. They're Mark Franco, Tanner Story, and Denise Thorson. There is also a West Cumberland seat for which 2 candidates are running, and we have Helene DiBartolomeo and Jeff Mahalik. And then there's a Four-side seat for which 2 candidates are running, Andrew Magoon and George Turner to my left. So without further ado, I'd like to invite the candidates to make opening remarks. We're going to start to my far right with Mark Franco and work down the dais through the candidates, and then we'll move on to the first question. So Mark, when you're ready, please feel free to start.
Thank you, Alyssa, and thank you to everyone who took the time to come out here today, and to everyone who's watching from home. Thank you to Alyssa for moderating the discussion. I did want to spend at least a second congratulating Bill Shane for his many years of service and dedication to the town, and thank you for everything you've done. I've only known Bill for 50 years, so I think I've known him longer than everyone in this room. But anyways, my bio is posted on the town's website. My background is that I grew up in Portland. I moved to Falmouth with my family. I lived there until 2017, moved to Cumberland in 2017. In Falmouth, I was involved in some community involvement as far as the Little League is concerned, and the Maine Children's Cancer Program. I served as the president of both of those organizations. I'm a practicing attorney. I've been practicing for 40 years at Drummond Woodsum in Portland. My interest in serving on the town council stems from my interest in community service in general, and also from my experience in representing municipalities throughout the state of Maine in my course as an attorney. I think I can bring some experience to the council, not in terms of council business, but in terms of a broad range of experience dealing with municipalities throughout the state of Maine. And I consider myself to be a problem solver, someone who is very analytical in evaluating questions and issues, someone who asks a lot of questions and challenges people's assumptions and conclusions. I force people to wait until they hear the voices of others before they come to their own conclusions, and I do that in my own practice. I always look at every issue in terms of what's the consequence of the decision. That's the most important thing to consider in my role as a counselor. What will be the effect of the citizens of the town of Cumberland on my decisions? And that's how I'll serve as a counselor in this case, in this town. Thank you.
Tanner, please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Tanner Story. I'm 31 years old and I'm running for town council. I live on Deep Creek Drive off Middle Road with my wife Caitlin and our 9-month-old daughter Lily. I graduated from the University of Southern Maine in 2017 with a Bachelor of Science in Technology Management. I'm a software engineer at Unum where I've been working for 10 years. I'm running for town council to give back to the community that has welcomed and served me and my family for my entire life. I grew up here, my parents grew up here, and my daughter will grow up here. Barring any unforeseen circumstances, I do not plan on leaving Cumberland. Cumberland is not a stepping stone for me. It is my home. Consequently, I have a vested interest in seeing the town move into the future in a thoughtful and fiscally responsible manner. Thoughtful meaning that I do not want to sacrifice the unique charm that we all know and love, and fiscally responsible meaning that spending and the taxes that come with them are not a barrier to entry for new residents or the reason existing residents are leaving. My brother Ryan and his fiancée Emily left Cumberland in part because they could not justify staying here and paying taxes without children. In other words, the taxes were only worth it if they had a child in the school system. There were other reasons, but that was a contributing factor. Unfortunately, I don't think they're the only ones who have had to make that decision. Speaking of family, I'm lucky to be part of a very large one. The stories have a rich history in public service and community participation in Cumberland. My grandfather Harlan Story served on the Board of Selectmen and Town Council for over 30 years, and my Aunt Shirley Story King has served on the Town Council for 18 years. Our family gatherings frequently feature discussions about local issues, upcoming town projects, and taxes. Anyone who has ever attended one of these gatherings knows that these discussions are loud. This is not only because many of us have or need hearing aids, but also because of the passion we have for the well-being and continued prosperity of our community. I share that passion, and if elected, I will be sure to bring it with me, though ideally at a much more reasonable volume. Thank you.
Denise.
Hi, I'm Denise Thorson. My family of 4 moved nationwide due to military work and family, and my husband lived in Brunswick as a child while his father served in the Navy and always hoped to come back to Maine one day. In 2022, we were able to make that happen and moved to Cumberland. As soon as we moved here, I jumped into public life, trying to volunteer, give back where I could, and make a positive impact on the community. I am a Lions Club member and member of the LCC Orchard Subcommittee as the education liaison to MS 8051 to try to provide curricular and extracurricular activities in a hands-on environment in the orchard for students. I enjoy attending town council meetings, learning about Cumberland's history. I feel like I'm making up for lost time, but I do enjoy these things. Professionally, I'm a U.S. Air Force veteran. I served as a Chinese language analyst stationed at Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam, tasked with creating comprehensive intelligence reports that inform national security decisions. I was a stay-at-home mom for 7 years after that, and then joined the tech sector. I am now a production system engineer, and my day-to-day involves knowledge management and sharing, client support, and process improvement and automation. When given a task, I bring diligence, energy, and enthusiasm, and I will advocate for all corners of Cumberland. I feel I have the skills, focus, and care to help Cumberland face the challenges that it currently deals with and will in the future proactively, including smart growth and housing variety, allowing us to grow while maintaining open spaces and our unique rural sense of place. I have a multifaceted approach to fiscal responsibility and place a huge emphasis on transparency and collaboration. I welcome constructive dialogue and hope to bridge gaps between people and government. I'm here to stay and I'm here to serve.
Colleen.
As we gather here today, I'm filled with a sense of duty and excitement to share with you my vision for our future. I stand before you as a candidate for our town, driven by passion and the challenge. In our pursuit of progress, it is imperative that we prioritize responsible and sustainable growth. We must ensure that our development not only benefits us today, but also preserves the resources and opportunities for generations to come. As your counselor, I pledge to champion that foster of innovation and prosperity while safeguarding our environment. Financial sense is the cornerstone of any thriving community. As a CPA with over 20 years of experience and the previous finance director for the town for 4.5 years, I understand the importance of prudent financial policies. I will work tirelessly to ensure that every taxpayer dollar is spent wisely, maximizing efficiency and accountability in our budgetary decisions. But beyond numbers and spreadsheets, Cumberland thrives on the strength of our bonds and the depths of our engagement. I believe in the power of grassroots initiatives and active participation. Together, we can build a more vibrant and inclusive community where every voice is heard and every contribution valued. We also must not forget that our greatest asset is our talent and dedicated workforce. As your town councilor, I will prioritize initiatives to attract and retain top talent, ensuring that Cumberland remains a place where people want to live, work, and raise their families. In these uncertain times, experience matters more than ever. As a seasoned leader with a proven track record of success, I am ready to hit the ground running on day one. I bring to the table the wisdom, insight gained from years of service, along with a relentless dedication to serve the best interests of our community. Together, let us chart a course towards a future defined by responsible growth, fiscal prudence, and unwavering community spirit. With your support, we can continue building the Cumberland that we all are proud to call home.
Jeff?
Good evening. As many of you know, I was fortunate enough to grow up in Cumberland and attend our excellent school system. This school system allowed me to excel in college, where I earned a degree in industrial management and have been employed by Milton Catt since 2004, functioning either in management or consultant role since 2006. So why do I want to run for town council? Well, truthfully, at 22, when I would watch these meetings on TV, I thought I had all the answers. Now at 44, I know I do not have all the answers, but by working with others, I feel the answers can be found. Cumberland is a town with great character and values. It has changed very much since my childhood. You cannot stop change, as every day our world is changing. However, the direction of change, I believe, can be modified so that the character of this town was built on remains in place for future generations to enjoy. We must remember the families who built this community. The Allens, the Blanchards, the Merrills, the Maloneys, the Smalls, the Wilsons, the Sweetsers, the Copps, the Storys, and the Fosters, just to name a few. We must be able to innovate and change and provide sustainability for all of our citizens. Look at challenges coming ahead to develop solutions now. I have heard of residents not being able to remain in Cumberland despite living here for their entire life because of property taxes. I have heard of younger generations wanting to remain here and move back because of the same tax burden. What has worked in the past may not work in the future. We must work towards new solutions. My goal is to provide a greater level of knowledge to all citizens regarding the town's financial picture, future capital improvements, in infrastructure, facilities, and vehicles. By providing this level of understanding, you're more informed when major decisions require your vote. While all this is important, we still need to maintain an excellent level of education for our children. I believe in education as to help put me in the place I am today, but I am grateful for the taxpayers that provided me with this. I feel Cumberland is currently at a crossroads, and the actions taken in the next 5 years will have a major effect on the character of this town. In closing, I am proud to live here. I am grateful for growing up in such a fine community, and that's what drives my ambition to run for town councilor. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew?
Hello. First, I want to thank everyone for the opportunity to be here before you tonight. I look forward to being able to share my perspective and allow people to get a chance to know some about me and how I'd approach this position. A little about me. I moved to Cumberland about 12 years ago to be closer to family and so my children could grow up with open spaces and fresh air. Prior to the move, I spent about a decade working for the Department of Defense in the Washington, D.C. area as an intelligence analyst. That job honed my natural inquisitiveness and gave me the skills to analyze incomplete data to come to conclusions. I've written for the highest levels of the government and represented the country to foreign allies on multiple occasions. I think these skills will serve me well in the town council where we need to plan for the future of this community. After moving to Cumberland, I was fortunate enough to spend a few years as a stay-at-home father while I earned my MBA from the University of Southern Maine and then began a career in residential real estate. I've now lived in Cumberland longer than I've ever lived anywhere else, and I truly consider it home. I think we are facing a critical juncture in this town's history. We will start a new comprehensive plan to look to the next few, we will start a new comprehensive plan in the next few months, We'll be welcoming a new town manager and are starting to see people look to Maine, and Cumberland in particular, as a place that checks most, if not all, the boxes for a desirable place to live. Growth is coming to Cumberland. It is up to us to ensure that we manage it successfully so we can welcome new neighbors while keeping the ones that we already have. We also need to ensure that this growth will not erode the natural beauty that we have in this town or its farming heritage. The obvious way to do this, I think, is to increase the commercial tax base and to take some pressure off the residents. I commend the council and our town manager, Bill Shane, for bringing local businesses to Cumberland, and look forward to continuing to work with our new town manager and hopefully fellow council members. I'm running for a spot in the town council to help ensure that this community continues to be a welcoming home for those from away, like myself, to those who can trace their families back to the founding of the town, and for everyone in between. I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
And George.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm George Turner. My story starts at Greeley back in the 60s during the Vietnam War. I went to Bowdoin College and graduated in 1970, spent 4 years in the Coast Guard as a marine science technician, spent 2 years of the 4 at sea, then 3 years in law school in California, and I brought my wife, Chris, to Maine after that in 1977, which is 47 years ago. It's been a long time. During the 47 years, I spent 20-some odd years on the Board of Appeals. I spent 16 years on the Town Council from 2005 to 2021. We've had a focus over the years on the council of having historical knowledge, an important mainstay as far as promoting the best intelligence that we could in terms of dealing with problems. My reason for running is basically historical identity. I think is important as far as the town council is concerned. We need a balance between new, fresh, young blood and older, more experienced people that know the town well. The issue that probably hits me hardest in my own mind is taxes. I think we're on a trajectory that isn't a very good one, and we've had taxes going up consistently for a number of years. The only way to tackle that problem is to look with a jaundiced eye at budgets, including the school budget and the municipal budget, and ask, do we really need this? Or do we want it? And if we just want it, we ought to look hard again and say, do we need it? Because there are a number of people in town, unlike the majority of the town who can afford their taxes at this point, there are a lot of people coming to the food bank that I'm sure have a hard time handling the tax burden that they have. As far as
George, I'm sorry, time's up. I gave you a couple extra seconds as I did with others, and I
Okay,
don't mean
thank
to
you.
interrupt. Thank you. We're going to move on to our first question, and we're going to start with Denise on this question. And this is really a sort of straightforward one. Please describe your top 2 priorities as a Cumberland Town Councilor.
All right. My top 2 priorities would be managing growth responsibly and transparency and communication with residents. One thing that has been obvious recently is with the housing referendum, a disconnect between the council and what might seem like it works and the opinions of the community as a whole. And finding a balance between that is really important. I think there are ways that we can grow and develop using smart growth principles, which I didn't make these up. You can go to Smart Growth Maine and they're all there, but it mainly centers around growing with particular growth areas with density and locations so that you can save and conserve land in others. And clustering that growth in centers where there are services, where neighborhoods are more walkable, and by doing that, it maintains a rural feel and sense of place. And as far as the referendum goes and housing, there's a housing development in Chase's Pit, which is a good example of small development that also has affordable units. But I think by looking at housing variety and kind of maybe opening our view of what housing looks like, we could do a lot of good and help organic growth happen within communities that already exist, where the infrastructure is already there, so it's easier to infill using things like ADUs, accessory dwelling units, which are, little small houses you can build to either rent out or use for an aging parent or an adult just setting off on their own. Also, mixed use, looking at manufactured homes, tiny home villages, home sharing, things like that. And the transparency and collaboration thing is huge. I think that the town council does a good job of communicating with residents, but to George's point about historical data, I enjoy reading old minutes because it's really cool to see kind of thought processes of town councils past. And I think the council could do more to put that in a way that residents can kind of digest it easier and track planning over time and put it on the webpage and stuff like that. But open communication is huge.
Great, thank you. Helene, please describe your top 2 priorities as a Cumberland Town Councilor.
I would say that my top 2 priorities would be working in collaboration with our surrounding communities in regards to working on ways where we can collaborate on efficiencies on shared services when it comes to public services as far as public safety or public works. And my second top priority would be I feel there's a disconnect when it comes to the town and this school district and our North Yarmouth town. We do a what we call a we have what's called a I'm having a they do the 3 meet on a quarterly basis, but they meet to just speak on business. They don't necessarily sit and have an actual working meeting. I don't see where they sit and have an actual working meeting where they sit and actually work on making things happen together. And I would like some more, see if we can have more collaboration between the 3 businesses working together to have things actually see action occurring between the 3 organizations as a whole. I think we would have more, if we could have more action between the 3 organizations, we'd have better communication about like the school.
Great, thank you. Jeff, please describe your top 2 priorities as a Cumberland Town Councilor.
Sure. So I feel one of them would be advanced planning and communication. And what I mean by that is just more visibility. A couple things that just come to mind as challenges that we're facing in the community. As you look at Greeley Road, it's not getting any younger. We can only put politician paint on it so many times, which is basically skinny mix hot top, before you need to further invest. We have the challenge of the school coming in, but if everyone's aware of some of these upcoming challenges that are hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, it kind of gives everyone the visibility of what we have going on. And having that visibility allows all of us to be kind of grounded when we're trying to make decisions and ask for what the community needs. So that's kind of number 1. So, advanced planning and getting that out visible to you folks. And 2 is collaboration, working with other towns. Like others have said, shared services. We can look at some of that to a point. There's others where that may not be practical, but also, the state and federal level. What can we get for surplus equipment from, say, the United States military? What else can we look for from a grant perspective? But, I think being able to collaborate with other towns and the school system and everything else, just trying to keep a long-term plan in place is probably 2 good directions to start with. So that's my top 2. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Andrew, please describe your top 2 priorities as a Cumberland Town Councilor.
I would like to sort of echo what's been said about growing smartly, and as I mentioned before, I think that we're going to see more and more people moving here. We'll never be more than 20 minutes away from Portland. We'll always have easy access to I-95, 295. We've got access to the ocean. It's a fantastic place on paper to live. Just even ignoring the good job that the schools do. And we're gonna have people from away looking to move here, people looking to move back. And it's how do we manage that correctly? How do we have places where we can increase the density and limit the impact on the open space so we can maintain that? I think the town has done a good job in the past of taking open space and preserving it for the future. We've got over 1,000 acres of just either forested or recreation for the town alone, and not to mention any land conservation trusts or people have put their land into conservation easements for tax purposes and all. So how do we maintain that open space? And then I'd also say finding ways to decrease the burden on the taxpayers. We have about 10% of our tax base, I believe, is commercial, and it's coming up from 2 that was 30 years ago, but that still leaves a heck of a lot for the residents to pay. And how do we do that smartly to find the locations that we can increase the commercial tax base and, again, not have too much of an impact on the surrounding areas?
Thank you. George, or actually, sorry. I'll let you catch
What
up.
comes back to my mind constantly is affordable housing and taxes, and taxes, taxes, taxes. We've got to stem the tide of the trajectory of our tax base and help people who have lived in this town a long time and contributed to the town who are having trouble paying their taxes. The affordability issue is an important issue because of the fact that we've got definitions now of what affordable is, and I don't know what definition works, frankly, with what's happened nationally and the supply-demand situation, which is way out of control. A bunch of us have become millionaires on paper, but if we go to sell our house, where are we going to move? If you're going to be in the same town or in the same type location, you pay it on the other end and then some. And we've got buildings, for instance, off Route 1, the Mark. There are units there that are less than 700 square feet, and they're $500 and somewhat thousand. There's a 1,000 square feet unit that goes for $700 and somewhat thousand. So somebody who thinks they're well off because they can sell their house for $750,000 or $800,000 thinks again when they go to transition, and it's causing people to consider renting, because for older people, it isn't probably a bad idea to take the cash out of their house, where they paid their mortgage off, and turn around and rent because of the extremely high prices. So it's all interwoven, and frankly, there's only so much we can do as far as solving these problems. Some problems are going to have to be solved on a national basis, but we're going to have, as Andrew says, we're going to have more and more demand. And when the U.S. News and World Report says the high school is, for 4 years in a row, the best school in Maine, guess what? That is a draw that's just hard to beat. And so we're going to have more and more people moving in with younger children. And if you're an elderly person and you're paying $7,000 a year in taxes, you can probably stand it. But you don't think of it as a panacea. Whereas a young family with 2 or 3 kids moves into town, and the cost per pupil is $16,500 or more, and they should be looking at their taxes and saying to themselves, wow, what a deal.
George, I'll have to ask you to wrap up. Sorry, we're over time again.
Okay.
Thank you. Mark, please describe your top 2 priorities as a Cumberland Town Councilor.
Thank you. My first priority is basically bring the people's voices into the council chambers and into this room to make sure that we all understand what they want, not what we want, not what our opinions are, about what their opinions are, what they need versus what they want, and ensure that there's a healthy debate about the pros and the cons of the problems that face the town, and not just to jump to conclusions. Some of us, not me, come into this debate or this discussion with preconceived ideas about what should and should not happen in the town of Cumberland. I have an open mind about what should and should not happen. I do have some opinions that I have strong feelings about, but I'm not going to force my opinions down people's throats. There are two issues. The second issue is to follow the comprehensive plan. One of the reasons I'm running is because of the fact that the comprehensive plan is being redeveloped after the 10-year mark now, and it's the most important document that the town has. And if you follow the comprehensive plan, and the councilors follow the plan and the priorities, which include making available quality, affordable housing for the people of all ages and income levels, to expand the non-residential tax base, and to facilitate modern growth through prudent planning. If you follow that plan, then you've followed the will of the people, and you need to follow the will of the people. It's illegal not to follow the comprehensive plan. I've defended municipalities that have been challenged because they haven't followed the comprehensive plan in court. So I feel like I know a little bit about that part of it. So I'd be the voice of the people. I bring their ideas into the council chambers. We debate those ideas intelligently and honestly, and we'd make decisions based on the consequences, and we'd follow the comprehensive plan, which would include a very important issue to me is the affordable housing issue, and we're going to revisit it if I get on the council.
And Tanner, please describe your top two priorities as a Cumberland Town Councilor.
Yeah, so my first priority, as many others have said, it's a important issue is taxes. I think if anyone moves out of this town because of the tax rate, and I think many have, that is a failure on the part of the town council. We would have not managed our tax rate and our spending appropriately, and it would have caused someone to move out of town. And I think first off, we need to shore up our tax rate and provide relief to the people who are here before we can grow further. That means we have to grow responsibly, particularly measuring the impacts that providing additional housing and affordable housing would have on an already strained school system. You know, we can't go into and suggest, I really am in favor of having affordable housing. I think it's a great place to live, Cumberland. But we need to know the effect that it's going to have on our school system. And without planning for that in tandem, I think that too would be a failure. Second is the accessibility of information, not just providing data out to our citizens, but providing it in a way that they can consume it. I think the town website has a ton of data and a ton of resources about past decisions and you know how money is spent. But I think people don't have the time to sift through it. I mean, going through this process, I have a 9-month-old daughter at home, and it was hard for me to prepare for this, and I'm interested. You know, it's just not in a consumable way. So again, top two priorities: tax relief, property tax relief, and responsible growth, and second, the accessibility of information and providing it to the public.
Great, thank you all. For our next question, we're going to start with Jeff. The topic generally is in the category related to taxes. These will get a little bit longer, so I'm happy to repeat them for people if you'd like. I'll ask as I start. If you don't want me to, you can jump right into your answer. This question is, so the Maine legislature and the governor recently enacted LD 2102, which repeals the law that limits a municipal property tax levy limit, previously known as LD1. What do you feel are the most effective ways to manage the municipal budget and the property tax levy in the town?
All right. I guess, obviously, we got to be fiscally responsible. We got to start there. And we got to innovate and try to find new solutions because in my opinion, we can't put an increased burden on the citizens in this town. There's got to be different solutions. There's got to be different options. Somebody said to me once, if you save your pennies, they add up to dollars, and dollars add up to hundreds of dollars, and hundreds of dollars add up to thousands. And we just need to start at the bottom and work our way up. I'm not one to believe to say, okay, let's just add 7%. It's only 7%. We gotta do better for the citizens of the town. We gotta look for other options. Sometimes we all gotta do without something that we all want. I'm the first person to have to answer this, so you're only gonna get a minute out of me, I guess. But those are my immediate thoughts that come to my mind, and that's where I stand.
Thank you. Andrew, would you like me to repeat the question?
If you can repeat just the last
Sure.
section of it.
What do you feel are the most effective ways to manage the municipal budget and property tax levy?
I was hoping you'd speak a little bit longer and give me a chance to.
See what I can do on the next one.
Sort of going off of Jeff's point of the, pennies turn into dollars, dollars turn into hundreds of dollars, hopefully. I also think that we need to make sure that when we're looking over the next budget, 5 years out, 10 years out, working with the comprehensive plan and all, that we're not being penny wise and pound foolish, that we're really making decisions today that will have the greatest impact for the good over the long-term history of the town, or the long-term future of the town. And I think, some of that was going to come for looking for efficiencies, both within the town and how we can collaborate with other municipalities on services, on, purchasing of larger items. If there are ways to, if we need to make an order for trucks, for example, are the surrounding towns, can we sort of come together and get a larger order and then get a discount on that? I would like to see the town in general, if there's a way to expand our energy efficiency. I think we've done a great job with the solar field of turning basically unusable, unbuildable land into a way to produce energy and lower our electric bill. I'd like to see more of that, continuing the energy efficiency projects that we've done to shore up the building envelopes of any town-owned businesses. If there's a way that the town can work with the states or the feds to help residents with that. I think there are many ways to tackle the tax burden, and it's not just the tax bill, but also there are other ways that we can work to lower the other expenses of the residents through utilities or anything like that. And I am about time. Give me the full 2 minutes to think.
George, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Sure. What do you feel are the most effective ways to manage the municipal budget and property tax levy?
Well, with regard to the non-constitutional nature of the tax break that we had for the elderly for a short time that got pulled away, I think it was appropriate in that when you look at the makeup of the town, you have a lot of young people who haven't had a chance to accumulate a great deal of wealth. You have older people, in many cases, who are very, very well off, and to give them a tax break because they lived here for over 10 years and are over 70 years old isn't necessarily the most prudent way to handle the tax situation. But I go back in my thinking to the 16 years I spent on the council with Shirley Story King and Ron Kopp and others who had historical knowledge from a long time, with family members having that same historical knowledge. And it occurs to me that in those 16 years, there was always respect from one counselor to the other. There was never, in 16 years, I never saw any dispute between counselors that was meaningful. Yet we'd have 4 to 3 decisions on occasion. Well, I got to thinking, what's the reason for that? Well, I think the reason for it is that agenda was not part of the scenario with most of those counselors. There were people that got on the town council with the idea of doing the best they can for all of the citizens of Cumberland, not just some of the citizens. And if political agendas get weaved into the process of trying to solve some of these problems, then you've got to say to yourself, well, at least in many cases, half the town disagreed with you on one issue or another. So it's wise to have a council that is made up of people who care about the town and who care most about the town by keeping agenda items that are political out of their content.
Thank you, George. Mark, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thanks. I know it. So I think we have to start the discussion with some facts that are basic. And that is that property taxes on average fund about 60% of the cost of local governments. The remainder of the revenue comes from state assistance, school subsidies, motor vehicle excise taxes, fees, et cetera. The biggest part of the property tax dollar is used to fund education. It's about 68%. Ours is 70%. We're right in line with the state in terms of the burden of property taxes. Every single municipality in this state complains about property taxes, and it's an issue. It's a concern. All of our values are going up. So what do? We try to reduce our property taxes through the budgetary process. I want to send a shout out to the council in the fact that they have done a great job of keeping the taxes increases at a relatively small level, 2% per year, for instance. So we have to, there's going to be a revaluation of property values in this town in 2025. We need to educate the public about what that means so they don't panic. We need to have more collaboration with the school board and their budgetary process, and we need to understand that budget better. And we may need to challenge some of their assumptions on the school budget. We need to increase the commercial tax base from its 10%, I would say, to 20% in the next 5 years. And we need to balance the need for services versus the expenses. But let's just face the fact. There's always going to be property taxes, and they're going to be increasing. The issue is going to be the rate of increase and to try to keep that rate at an affordable level for the citizens, and to also to try to keep the citizens in the town and not make them leave because of the property taxes.
Thank you. Tanner, would you like me to repeat the question?
Just the law part, like what?
Oh, the
what
law
were you
part?
talking-
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there was a first part that
Yeah,
you had mentioned.
sure.
I haven't read the law, but I'm interested what you said initially.
Absolutely. So the Maine legislature and the governor recently enacted an LD, which was 2102, which repeals the law that limits a municipal property tax levy limit. And so the question is, what do you feel are the most effective ways to manage the municipal budget and the property tax levy?
Well, I didn't know that the levy could be limitless now. That's upsetting at the surface level, but interesting nonetheless. I mean, as far as managing the municipal budget and the property tax levy, I think really, there's no secret sauce to it. It's about prudent financial decision making, just like any other budget in our lives. You have to evaluate what the items are and what value the citizenship is going to get out of them. I think there are certainly things that jumped out at me when I was reviewing the budget, even at a surface level, but I found it difficult to get into the details of what was behind those numbers as someone who wasn't attending the council meeting in person, or who didn't have access to the more detailed materials, or at least I couldn't find them online. So, it's about diving into the numbers and making sound financial decisions about what value you're getting out of it. Like I said, I saw some numbers that jumped out at me. There was like a 35% increase in our liability insurance this past year, or is proposed for fiscal year 25. Go and shop that insurance, try and find a lower cost competitor of our liability insurance provider. That's what I would do if I saw a 35% increase in my insurance bill. And, just apply that same sound financial decision-making throughout the remainder of the budget. It will take time to sift through, as it does every year, I'm sure, and I think the council has done a good job, but, you know, that really is it. You have to spend the time reducing costs where you can so it doesn't affect the citizenship as much.
Thank you. Denise, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, that's okay, great. I think, first of all, we have to be diligent and resourceful when it comes to this. And we have a lot of smart people in town, a lot of very financially savvy people in town. So regardless of where the data comes from, whether it's from someone on the council or someone from the community coming with data, taking a look at it really objectively and looking at it closely and welcoming ideas of community members. In general, just basics to manage taxes, commercial growth, it's a big thing. It's been something that the town's tried to do for decades, you know, and it is getting better, but there's still more work to be done. And the Route 100 commercial area with the roundabout and improvements, I think that'll be a great attractant of commercial business to that area. Making sure we're being business friendly. We have that blue sign down on Route 1, certified business friendly. I think that was from 2012. Just making sure we're still doing that. Actively pursuing state and federal grants when they come up, if we qualify. Also, when it comes to wants, wants versus needs, if there is a want, collaborating with nonprofits or local groups to fundraise for things that we might not want to spend out of the general fund, but the community wants. Utilizing TIF for eligible projects, which is basically what we're going to have to do going forward for capital improvements in the next handful of years, because there's not going to be any money to do it with, because we have reval, school budget, school project all hitting at the same time in fall of 2026. So you can't really do any big capital improvements out of the general fund at that time because it's going to create a mill rate issue. So using TIF smartly, as Tanner said, shop around for insurance, because insurance and benefits and contracted service, software licensing, it's a lot. And usually there's a benefit to shopping around periodically for that, because they don't reward you for your loyalty. Consolidation with neighboring towns for fire and police, if that ever comes to fruition. But overall, the town maintains a pretty tight budget, municipal budget, and a lot of it comes down to things out of the control of the town itself. But collaboration with the school, I think, will go a long way, because that's where 70% of our taxes come from.
Great, thank you. And Helene, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank
Great.
you.
Go ahead.
I can tell you firsthand that the town's budget is very tight. The town manager, Bill Shane, every year goes through that budget and goes through it with a fine-tooth comb. And he goes through each line item, and we have in the past, and I know through this budget process, has probably redone and looked at the insurance. 80%, 75 to 80% of that budget is personnel. The majority of the budget for the municipality is personnel. It's what makes this town is made up mostly of people. It's the people who do the work for the town. It's the people who sit at the front desk. It's your police officers. It's your firefighters. It's the people that run the town for us and make it the town that we have. And the majority of the tax base is the school budget, and that's where we have to collaborate with the North Yarmouth and the school, and we need to work with them, and that's where we need to look, and we need to work together, and we need to determine what it is that we need to look at that tax base, and we need to find out how we need to what the school can do to lower that tax base. I mean, we know every year in our homes, we look at the gas prices, we look at in our own households, the prices go up. It's an unnecessary evil of everyday living that prices that we deal with go up, and it's the organization itself, the town, the school. Prices go up for everybody as a business, and so we'll just have to work together to figure out how we're going to all work together to figure out how we're going to make those prices, those taxes not go up as high quickly.
Thank you. This third question, we're going to start with George. And the general category of this question relates to growth and affordable housing. In 2022, the Maine legislature enacted LD 2003, which requires municipalities to allow increased density for housing, including affordable housing in designated areas, as well as accessory dwelling units for the purpose of increasing housing production in the state. What is your view on the town's role in managing growth and addressing housing needs in the state?
Well, listen, my initial reaction is that we are at a crossroads as far as the rural character of Cumberland being retained. We've touted that as a very important ingredient for the citizens of Cumberland. I don't think there are many people who've moved to Cumberland who wouldn't acknowledge that they appreciate the rural character of the town, appreciate the scenic vistas. With increased density goes, even though we've got conservation subdivisions that are hidden behind trees, but they're all $1 million houses. Sooner or later, when you increase the density and make for smaller lots and so on, you create a situation that changes the atmosphere of the town. I think we have to think long and hard about how we want the town to change. And I think that vision has been there for the last 40 years, but I think we're going to be straining here in the next number of years to maintain a modicum of balance between the desire to increase smaller lots and have smaller houses and so on, and the value of the town. And I worry about that. I had another thought that flew out of my too aged mind, but at any rate, that's the gist of the way I feel about it.
Thank you, George. And we'll turn to Mark. Would you like me to repeat the question portion?
Just the second part.
Sure. What is your view on the town's role in managing growth and addressing housing needs in the state?
So it's obvious that all you need to do is watch the news every night, and there's another news story about the lack of affordable housing in the state of Maine. There was just one, I just saw one at 5:30. They just opened a new affordable housing project in Bath. So they made it work. And they're making it work in other municipalities, and there's no reason why we can't either. When we first moved to Cumberland, we moved to a subdivision that was considered affordable housing. It's no longer considered affordable housing. And the basic issue that we face here is that we just don't have the land. The land is too expensive for developers to develop housing. There's not a lot of town-owned land to develop affordable housing on, so it's a real dilemma. But I do think that there's a state mandate to address the issue. There's a comprehensive plan mandate to address the issue. It should become one of the first priorities of this new council to explore and develop alternatives and options for affordable housing in this town. The voters overwhelmingly rejected the latest affordable housing proposal, and we need to find other opportunities, other areas in the town to develop those opportunities going forward.
Thank you, Mark. Tanner, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. So I think the role of the town in managing growth and affordable housing, so first on the growth side, I think that any growth should be managed in terms of the strain that it will put on our existing resources, whether or not we can provide the services that those folks will need in that area. if there is an area designated for growth. Thinking in particular to the affordable housing proposal that was rejected, as you said, that would have been right in the center of town, and if the folks who moved in there were expecting there to be buses or other public transportation available to them right when they moved in, we don't currently have buses that run through, so the town would need to manage that part of it and all of the things that come with it. Similarly, if there were an increase in services that needed to be provided, EMS, police services to that area, that would have to be accounted for as well. So I think the town's role in managing the growth comes with what are the services that area will need. As far as addressing affordable housing, I think all we can do is designate areas that we intend to be affordable housing and send it to the voters. If they don't see the value in it being there, I think we have to listen to that and see why and maybe address those problems. For me, I thought that the affordable housing proposal that we had, we're going to see an increase in services that we wouldn't have been able to sustain. And I think that it was also on a piece of land that was gifted to us for the purposes of education. So I took issue with that particular part of it. So anyways.
Thank you. Denise, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yeah.
Sure. What is your view on the town's role in managing growth and addressing housing needs in the state?
Right, well, I touched on this a bit earlier, so I don't want to repeat too much of what I said. But primarily through our comprehensive plan, which is coming up for review this summer, the committee is going to be looking really deep into it. Evaluating land use, designating existing or new growth areas, and reviewing our ordinances, I think, to see if we can kind of get out of our own way in some areas to allow residents to create their own housing in their own existing neighborhoods. What I mean by that is if a homeowner wants to split their lot, like if they have a large lot, and build an ADU on it, or just a small residence that they like to either sell or rent out, making sure that our ordinances aren't overly restrictive on that as far as minimum setbacks, potentially adjusting to where you could have two houses fitting better. So if you have the minimum setback on one and you wouldn't be able to build one with the other, kind of adjusting that or making exceptions so we could fit housing in within our existing ordinances. Also, infill development, taking advantage of existing infrastructure. And as far as maintaining affordability, requiring deed and resale restrictions on affordable housing developers, because that guarantees long-term affordability and it removes speculative investors from the equation. Also, with that, requiring developers to create housing that has a range of income levels within it, not just one single % of the AMI, but mixing it up a bit. Also, TIF District 1 is coming up it's going to expire, but it can be extended. And 70% of that would need to be used for transit and affordable housing. So if the council does pursue that, that's something that could kind of marry affordable housing and transit as well.
Thank you. Helene, would you like me to repeat the question?
Please.
Okay. What is your view on the town's role in managing growth and addressing housing needs in the state?
I believe it's the town's responsibility to manage growth. But for what benefits the community, not necessarily what benefits the state. I think we need to make sure we take care of our population, our families, in order to make sure that our families can stay here and our generations can stay here and age here and be able to have our families of families be able to stay here as long as they want to. but not at the expense of other families wanting to also be here. I do feel that we have to do it carefully and financially responsibly, and I think that when we went into when we went into that referendum for affordable housing, I think we had to do it a little bit slower because we went a little bit too quickly with not understanding what was happening with the school. And I feel like, I think that Cumberland felt scared with what was happening with the school and the population and what was going to happen with the tax base based on the bond for the school and what was going to happen with the growth based on the affordable housing, what kind of population that was going to bring and the population of children that was going to bring in as well. I think there was a lot of mixed feelings with that, and I think that if we took it a little bit slower, we could have had a successful referendum. I think there's an opportunity to look at that again, and that we should, and if we do it in a more thoughtful process, that maybe it will be successful in the long run.
Thank you. Jeff, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you.
Great.
So I'm going to start off. I'm a pretty analytical person. So I think first, the biggest thing is you got to listen to the citizens. We get into designating new land for housing. How's that going to affect you folks? That's my first question. Because one day you had a field next to you, and now all of a sudden you might have something else. You know, the next thing is if we start to go down this road, we need to make sure as a community we can support it. We need to make sure we have the ability to support the people that will move in there and our current citizens as well. So we need to look at how will it burden the school system? How will it affect the current neighbors? Can we support the people that live in these homes? You know, Tanner spoke about buses. You know, do we have that infrastructure in place? If we can do all this, it shouldn't come as a tax burden to you folks. So, you know, when we look at, you know, maybe looking to do this, you know, the ideal thing is we have multiple developers competing for a solution, because I feel whenever you have multiple people going after the same opportunity, you're going to get multiple solutions, and those multiple solutions are going to give us the best options. You're going to have multiple people thinking up different stuff. And again, you know, looking at multiple income levels, you know, it's not streamlined at one bandwidth, you know, maybe different tiers. But ideally, we gotta plan it out, and we gotta make sure we can do this before we go down and sink a shovel in the ground and start putting a foundation in. And those are my thoughts right there.
Thank you. And Andrew, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. I think, you know, as others have noted, you know, this is a very, very complex issue, and there's no easy solution. There's no, you know, we already would have picked it if there was. Any growth is going to not just impact, you know, residents in terms of the number of people here, but also we have to, you know, think about things like sewer line and water access. You know, there are certain limits on the infrastructure that we already have, and, you know, how do we best manage that? And so I'd say that the town's, you know, role is to look at all of the issues, all the constituents as well, and all the stakeholders, including the surrounding towns that are going to be impacted by, you know, if we need to increase sewer, that's got to come from somewhere. How are we going to do that? You know, as others have mentioned, I think we need to, with the comprehensive plan, is the perfect time for this actually to, you know, take a look at zoning. Are there areas that we need to change the zoning to increase growth or to preserve some more land where we increase growth in other places? Transportation. Hopefully we can bring transportation up through, you know, potentially Route 1, and then have some sort of, you know, a jitney-like service maybe to get people down to the bus lines if we're able to connect to Metro. And, you know, if we're able to get a train stop here in Cumberland, that would be a great place, I think, for having additional housing. We've got transportation right there into Portland, up to Freeport. If they're potentially able to increase the line into the rest of the state, up to Augusta, that would be great. But I think when it comes down to it, you know, we need to look at the supply and demand. The demand is there, and the way to bring prices down is to increase supply. And we need to make sure that we're doing that the right way and doing it in the right areas. But you know, we're a happening place. People are going to want to come here.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to question 4, which is the last question prior to closing statements. And we're going to start with Tanner on this question. The category of this, or the general topic of this question, is economic development. And the question is, Maine law allows municipalities to establish tax increment financing districts and to use the tax revenue from these districts for a variety of uses, including certain public infrastructure, economic development activities, transit, and affordable housing. The town of Cumberland has 8 TIF districts currently. What do you think is the most effective way for the town to utilize its TIF districts?
Thank you. I was listening to the most recent budget meeting this afternoon, and as Denise mentioned, there's TIF District 1 coming up for a possibility of an extension another 20 years. And you know what that would be is us. As far as I understand, I'm not a TIF expert, but as far as I understand it, we'd be borrowing against or allocating money for public infrastructure development against the future property value of that district. And that's been, that district already has money and it's set to expire. I think, like that's basically earmarking money that we can then use for public infrastructure. When you earmark that money for public infrastructure, it can't be used for things like paying for our school budget. I would say that, like, while it is nice to have public infrastructure, and I could be getting this wrong. Like I said, I'm not a TIF expert. While we could use that money for public infrastructure, if it should go up against the possibility of using it to provide tax relief to folks. I think by earmarking the money and saying this is only to be used for public infrastructure, it suppresses the public potential conversation about it and how that money could be used otherwise. I do think there is value in extending and providing more public infrastructure to areas that need to be developed, but I think that should always be weighed against the other possibilities, not permanently earmarked for just public infrastructure or development.
Thank you. Denise, would you like me to repeat the last part of the question?
Yes, please.
What do you think is the most effective way for the town to utilize its TIF districts?
I think TIF district usage needs to be tied to a specific long-term goal that also is in line with the comprehensive plan, which, I mean, that's already how it's used, but just ensuring we keep doing that. Looking at extending districts that make sense and choosing those wisely and tying them to economic development, because that's the requirement. It either has to have infrastructure improvement, connection, or promote economic development. It has to be used for that. And then within those districts, you can designate things, to affordable housing, senior housing in particular, and just seeing how they're structured and seeing where gaps exist in town and what we need to cover as far as capital projects or certain types of housing, transit, and making them work better together. Currently, there's, one thing at the budget meeting that was talked about was that a district that is tagged for affordable housing, you can also use that to employ a housing director out of that money. So it's not coming out of the general fund as far as, as far as having a position where you hire someone, then you have to pay them from the general fund, which increases the municipal budget. You can take it out of the TIF. So that's one way to kind of shift around expenses to where you're paying for things, you're completing these really expensive capital improvement projects, but they're not impacting your taxes directly with the mill rate. And I actually have time left. That's basically it. Just looking at what we have, what's going to expire, decide if we want to let things expire or extend, and do it smartly and make sure it's tied to a specific goal.
Thank you. Helene, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. So if the TIF district expires, the tax revenue that was generated for that TIF district goes back to the general fund. So the decision has to be made on whether or not you want those revenues to be reallocated to be used towards to the general fund, or if you want if you want to redistrict it to be used for affordable housing and transit. Now, now we're at a crossroad, because at the last budget workshop, we were also having discussion, the council, on whether or not we can afford additional staff for the fire department. So there has to be a decision that needs to be made. Do you want the funds to go back to the general fund to be used for your operational costs in the general fund, or do you want to keep that and put it back and redistrict it for affordable housing and transit? That is a decision, I think, that has to be discussed on a bigger level with the community for everyone to make a decision as a whole. That's a big decision. We all have to make that decision together, because that's a 20-year decision. Once we make that decision, we're stuck for it for 20 years. So I think that's a really big decision that we have to make together as a community, and we really need to have everybody on board together to make that decision. And I don't think I can make that decision on my own. And I don't have an opinion without everyone else's opinion with it. So, but I can offer some insight to it.
Thank you. Jeff, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think I'm ready to go. So, I'm a pretty innovative person, like to think up all kinds of new ideas, and I really like to push the envelope on a lot of stuff. But to do that, I got to listen. I got to get a lot of people's viewpoints. So those come from you folks. And, if you elect me, I'm going to be listening to what you folks have to say on this. But I got to give you my opinion right now, and I'm prepared to do that. We need to consider both sides of these TIF districts. What are the pros and cons of an extension? I can't answer that without looking at some more data, because data is key to some of these answers. We need to keep some of them, as we do have some challenges where some of these financing can be used. I mentioned Greeley Road. We look at water challenges in the valley and Bruce Hill Road. We talked about affordable housing. However, putting money back into the general fund would allow for us to use it towards operational costs. So my feeling is, hey, we got to look at both of these. Maybe TIF District 1 has to go away because it's going to give us more money into the operational budget, but maybe we need to keep the other 7 because we have those challenges coming up to deal with. But again, it's you folks, it's your town. I'm here to work for you. I'm here to listen to you, and that's my stance on it.
Thank you. Andrew, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you.
Great.
I will also sort of profess my ignorance, as Tanner and others have. I'm not an expert on TIF districts, but I do think that I am good at asking questions and trying to find the way to ask the questions to really get at the heart of the issue and to figure out what we can do and how this would impact things, the second, third, and fourth order effects of different decisions that we make in the town. And I think that it's actually a good time right now with the comprehensive plan coming up to really figure out, get the data from the town of, what is the town looking to do? What are the priorities? How have we changed as a town? The last real comprehensive, data source that we have is 10 years old now, and the makeup of the town has changed, and I'm sure the priorities of the town have changed. And then looking at how we want to take that information and move forward for the next, 10 years. Hopefully we can find a way to get the information in 5 years, because I think we'll be changing some more in that time. But I think that the TIFs can be useful when done correctly, and we just need to make sure that we are really looking at the priorities of the town and using them in the right way to limit the impact of any larger capital improvement projects on the tax rate. And from my very limited understanding of the TIF districts done correctly, there are ways to do that.
Thank you. George, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. No, a lot of people don't understand TIFs completely, and I'm one of them. And I look at it as a little bit of smoke and mirrors sometimes. There are good aspects of TIFs, and there are not so good when they affect the ability for school districts to garner enough money to take care of their needs. When you're artificially lessening the amount of money that goes to the school by saying, okay, if you spend it on infrastructure, then we'll be in good shape. One thing that hasn't been mentioned, we talk about management and property management and so on very cavalierly. We don't mention the private sector. The fact is the private sector has a tendency to anticipate what needs are. If a certain area needs to be developed commercially at a given time, if you wait long enough, the commercial entity will appear. Unfortunately, we've made some of the few mistakes that have been made, in my view, in the last 40 years have been surrounding commercial property, where we've had commercial zone and we've been frustrated with the fact that we couldn't get a bank to go in or some commercial entity, and all of a sudden we turn it into affordable housing and take it out of the commercial purview. We know that the more we expand our commercial tax base, that's a key element of being able to hold taxes down. And yet, in recent years, we've had a heck of a lot more commercial property going in one way or another to residential. And I think we've built a wonderful town that everybody loves, but we're hostages to our own success in some ways. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, George. And lastly, Mark, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thanks.
Okay.
So, as I understand TIF, with respect to the town of Cumberland, the state law requires or allows that 5% of a town's acreage can be allocated to specific TIF districts. And as Alyssa said, there are 8, one's expiring. And that's only like 4% of the town's acreage to date. One of the TIF districts was the Down Road project, which wasn't used to fund that project. So there's a delicate balancing act between the use of the TIF districts and the use of the funds in the TIF districts versus taking that money out of the district and allocating it for the general fund and the general revenue, general purposes. You can't use TIF funds, for instance, to fund just general expenses for the town, school budget, et cetera. But TIFs are designed and they're implemented by law to spur and encourage economic development. And you have to be able to take advantage of that. And if you don't have economic development, then you're stalemate. You have to be able to keep going forward. And I would say that we have to keep our TIF districts without knowing anything else and encourage economic development in those districts and use the funds for those districts instead of putting them back into the general fund for purposes of the school budget. It's not going to make a huge difference if you put it back into a general fund. It makes a huge difference if you use it for economic development.
Thank you. And then lastly, we'll move to closing statements for the candidates. Everyone will have 2 minutes each, and we're going to start with Helene and work our way this way.
In closing, again, I've worked for the town as a finance director for 4.5 years. I worked prior in the state of Florida for a school district with 18,000 students, a budget of $250 million, and I was a CPA there, a CFO there, and I have a pretty comprehensive understanding of financial information. I currently work for the Portland Public School District. They're now overhauling their payroll and financial system. So I'm big on challenges, and I'm here to take on the challenge of the town council. So I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff?
All right. I want to thank all you folks for taking time out of your busy lives to come here this evening. I think that all the candidates up here tonight are excellent citizens, and it speaks volume of the quality of the people living in Cumberland. For those of you who came in support of me, thank you. For some of you who have questions, reach out to me. For the people who know me well, it's safe to say my character speaks volumes. I am honest. You always know where I stand on an issue. I'm a hard-working individual, but I'm always willing to take the time to listen to the needs of citizens' concerns. I have a solid education and work experience that encompasses financial analysis and planning, operations management, and I just like to think outside the box of new and creative solutions, and I think that's all going to help me function in this position if I'm elected. However, I have one skill that I believe one cannot buy or learn from reading a book, and that is the skill of being able to work with others, and I believe I excel at this every day. You got to bring people together to accomplish a goal. The role of a town councilor is not one of a dictator, but more of a person who can hear issues and work to provide solutions while trying to maintain a workable future for all. I want to close by saying this is your town, and I want to provide you with the information needed to make decisions, but I also want to strive for more financial and operational transparency, more long-term planning that is visible for all to provide input on, and to work to innovate current processes and procedures to try to have new dynamic solutions, to plan for a future so that the character and the quality of the town does not change in a negative direction, and most importantly, to work to make sure our tax burden does not increase to the point where it forces residents outside of this town, who are the ones that paid the cost to make this town what it is today. However, to innovate, we need to be open to new ideas and exploring any option that helps benefit the town or its citizens. If elected, I want to be the councilor who isn't afraid to ask questions or challenge the status quo to drive improvements for all. I may be young, I have energy, and I want to use that energy to make Cumberland a sustainable community for all. I can promise you one thing, I will work hard for this town and the citizens. My goals can be summarized into 5 words: transparency, accountability, sustainability, responsibility, and creativity. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew?
First of all, I'd just like to thank everybody here or what's watching or watching later for taking interest in this, and I'd like to thank my fellow candidates for their interest in the town. And to echo what Jeff said, I think that all of us are great citizens, and I'd just like to thank them for taking the time and the effort to put themselves out there. Throughout this process, I look forward to hearing from everyone, those that I know, those that I don't, on their views on the town. We are here to work for the town, for the citizens of the town. We are not here to, as it's been mentioned before, to just push our own individual agenda, but to really to take the feedback from the citizens and then, use our best judgment to help the town go forward. I think one of my best skills is the ability to ask questions, including the most important one, and then what? I intend on using that skill to tackle any of the issues that we have coming up as a town, and sort of figuring out how that's really going to impact the future of the town, the residents of the town, the future generations of this town. Sort of in a closing, I think Cumberland's a great place to live. Like I said, it's the longest. I've lived here the longest of anywhere in my life, and I truly consider it home now. And I look forward to making it so my kids one day can live here if they so choose, and other generations can live, and it can be a great place for them too. Thank you, and I would appreciate your vote.
George?
I want to take the opportunity to thank everybody for coming tonight and everybody who's watching. I think I'm a pretty well-known entity as far as town is concerned, and I think everybody knows I'm honest and I'm a straight shooter. I don't tell people things that I don't believe, and I want to take the opportunity to thank all of the volunteers who volunteer on all our various boards in town. We've got some of the brightest people on the planet, in my view. And the Lansing Conservation Commission, the Planning Board, virtually every coastal waters, virtually every town committee that we have is made up of caring people who are interested in one thing, and that is benefiting the town and making the best decisions they can for the citizenry of the town. And I honor that to the highest degree, and everybody, you can find me very easily in the phone book, and I look forward to those of you who want to support me, your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone that came out tonight and who's watching on the television, and encourage you to get out and vote. I looked at the statistics from the last two elections, and in June of '22, the participation rate was 23.5%. In June of '23, it was 22.16%. Not good. Get out and vote, whether it be for me or for someone else, please. So why me? So some of the skills that I think I can bring to this position include my reputation as a team player, as a collaborator, someone who's respectful of others' views, someone who strives to execute and exercise good judgment, and most of all, solves problems. My job for the past 40 years as an attorney has involved solving all of my clients' legal problems and to provide good, sound advice. They've had and continue to depend on me to come up with a solution that solves that problem. However, that does not mean that I tell them what they want to hear, and oftentimes I don't. In fact, sometimes I'm the bearer of bad news, and I'm not afraid to make difficult decisions or provide advice that's difficult to digest. So I'm required to exercise my problem-solving skills and give my clients advice based upon my knowledge and experience. In terms of my approach to the council position, as I said, I viewed myself as a voice of the people. I'd make sure that I would solicit and understand the problems and concerns that the citizens have, try to work with fellow council members to address those concerns. To the extent that I have a viewpoint or an opinion, that would be based on my analysis of the facts of each issue, my understanding and appreciation for the view of others, and most importantly, my evaluation of the consequences and the outcomes of each decision as opposed to emotion, sympathy, passion, or political views. The challenges faced by the town of Cumberland are both unique to the town and commonly faced by other municipalities in the state. I have a broad-based understanding of those challenges based upon defending other municipalities throughout the state. They face the same issues. I think I can bring that experience to the table here in Cumberland. Thank you.
Thank you. Tanner?
First off, I want to say, please don't confuse any passion that I've displayed tonight for stubbornness. I can probably come across that way, but I really am here to serve the will of the people. I am still learning. I have opinions, but those opinions do not override yours. I promise to continue to learn as well. I do think that my childhood, my education, and my career have fostered my ability to learn about, empathize with, and solve for problems. The most important and difficult of those to master is empathy, to understand where someone is and where they're coming from. It's hard to solve a problem that someone else is facing if you do not first meet them where they are. My priority will always be to listen to and empathize with our citizens, not just the most vocal of our citizens or the most active, but also those who are not able to participate. In closing, it would be an honor and a privilege if I'm able to carry on the legacy and tradition of service that both my grandfather Harlan Story and my aunt Shirley Story King demonstrated in their time serving the town. Thank you to the town of Cumberland and to the folks that came out today. I really appreciate it, and I look to speaking with you all more.
Thank you. And Denise?
Thanks everybody for coming and for watching at home. I hope that these questions were able to help you make a more informed decision in our upcoming election. Being a veteran, I'm deeply committed to service, whether it's on the town council potentially or through my continued service through the Lions Club or through the LCC Orchard Subcommittee. I'm going to be here participating in things that give back to our community and make it a better place to live. My focus, again, is on smart growth and housing variety, fiscal responsibility, and transparency and collaboration. Cumberland's demographics and housing needs have changed over the years, and we should respond proactively so we're not reactive. To be more adaptable, inclusive, and sustainable for existing and future residents. To quote the comprehensive plan, change is not easy, but short-term thinking should not outweigh long-term planning. As a town councilor, I will approach fiscal matters with integrity, diligence, resourcefulness, and will welcome ideas of Cumberland's community members. My view prioritizes Cumberland's long-term economic health, sustainable growth. I'm dedicated to helping unite Cumberland around a shared vision for our future through transparency and collaboration. Government's a two-way street, and leaders have a fundamental responsibility to maintain open communication with the people they serve. Transparency builds trust in our elected officials and holds them accountable, ensuring every voice in our community is valued and our vote matters. My service in the military exposed me to a lot of different people, different backgrounds, different cultures. I've learned how to collaborate with all types of people, how to disagree respectfully, how to find common ground, and to compromise. And this is a time of transition in the town with a new town manager, new seats on the school board and such, and that's going to be something that is required going forward. I have information in the back if you'd like to pick it up. If you Google me, I have a website. There's all sorts of things about me that I put out there to try to help you be more informed. Please reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.
And I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. I want to thank the candidates for participating, for their thoughtful responses and the respect they've shown one another. I will also want to point out that there is a table at the back. Some of the candidates have left some information. Please feel free to check that out before you leave. Tonight's program will be rebroadcast on the town's local access channel. There is also a similar forum being held, I think, next week for the school board candidates, so we encourage you to tune in to that. And of course, we encourage you all to vote on June 11th. Thank you very much. Good night.